Hello everyone. So after running the Flutter app into Android and iOS virtual device, we can start our journey to Flutter development. So let's start by understanding the structure of a Flutter project. Now here we have a brand new Flutter demo project, and inside it we get a couple of files and folders generated for you. So I'll go from top to bottom and try to explain you about what is the use of each of file and folders. The .._tool folder, which is new in Dart 2, is used by pub and other tools. And if you don't know what pub is, so basically pub is a package manager for Dart programming language containing reusable libraries and packages for Flutter, Angular Dart and general Dart programs. It is basically same as the npm or any other package manager, but it is specific to Dart and Flutter. So like if we are required to have some functionality in our app and it's already been created by some other developer, then we can use their work instead of creating it from the scratch with the help of pub. And it uses this folder for its work, and we need not to change anything inside this folder. In the upcoming video, we will see how to use pub in our Flutter project. Now next is this .idea folder, and it holds the configuration of Android Studio, so all the project specific settings of your project are stored in this folder. The project settings are stored with each specific project as a set of XML files. Now if I open it here, you can see a lot of .xml files. So if you specify the default project setting, then these settings will be automatically used for a newly created project, and we don't need to change anything here. It is all managed by Android Studio itself. Then we have this Android folder. This folder contains a complete Android native app project and is used when building your Flutter application for Android. And when we build a Flutter app on Android device, the folder is compiled to native code and gets injected into this Android project, so that the result is native Android application. And you don't need to change anything here, or very rarely when you are required to implement some Android specific dependency, and that's very rare case, and I will mention you when to do. Next is the build folder, and it holds the output of your Flutter application when it runs on iOS and Android device. And if you don't have this folder, don't worry, just run your Flutter app into Android or iOS virtual device by hitting on this button. Then you will get this folder, because it is not created at the starting of the project unlike all these folders. Instead, it is created as a part of the build process. So when your project is built for any platform, you will get this folder. Next is the iOS folder. Similar to Android folder, the iOS folder contains a complete Xcode iOS native project. Xcode is a development environment of macOS for iOS apps, and it is used for building iOS apps, macOS apps, and much more. And also Xcode is not available for Windows, so building Flutter application is only possible in macOS. And over here, if I right click on this folder and choose to reveal in Finder, then inside this you can see this runner.xcode workspace and runner.xcode project files. And if you have developed an iOS app with Xcode, then you would be familiar with these files. So we need not to change anything here. It is automatically managed by Flutter, and there will be some occasions when we will be building our app to iOS real device or publishing iOS apps to App Store. Then we are going to use this folder, otherwise no need to touch this folder. Next is the lib folder, and it is a super important folder. Now lib here stands for library, and this is the folder where we will do 99% of our work. So inside this folder, we are going to have the Dart files which contain the code of your Flutter application. Dart is the programming language used by Flutter. Initially, it contains just one single file, that is the main.dart, which is the entry point of your Flutter app. and this is the code inside this main.dart file. So we will be adding Dart files inside this lib folder and writing our code in Dart. So this is the folder where we will spend most of the time when implementing Flutter applications. Next is the test folder. It also contains the Dart files, but those files contain code that is related to perform automated tests for your app when building. So if you decided to write test cases for your code, then you will be adding code here, and you will be doing so when you will be an advanced Dart programmer. So till then you can just ignore this folder. So these are some folders that are available in our Flutter project. Now let's see the files we get inside a Flutter project. So the first is this .gitignore file, and this is a text file containing a list of files, file extension and folders which should be ignored while working with Git. Git is a distributed version control system for tracking changes in source code during software development, and it is very helpful tool if you are working in team to coordinate your work among programmers and also to track changes in your code and files. So like if you try to implement some functionality and you messed up with your code and think to go back where you started and some other state of your code, then Git is really very helpful. Although it's optional to use Git, but I strongly recommend you to try Git with Flutter, and we will see in later lectures how to use it, and believe me, it is very easy and you're definitely gonna like it. Next is the .metadata file, and as the name suggests, this file contains information related to other files of your project, and this file is totally managed by Flutter and should not be manually edited. Similar to metadata, the .packages file hold a path to each of libraries packages for your Flutter project, and you can see over here that it contains basically two things, and first one is the name of the library and then the path to that library, and it is totally managed by Flutter SDK, so you don't need to make any manual changes here. Next is this flutter app.yaml file. Remember, this file is always named according to the name of your Flutter project. Here I have named my project as Flutter app, so its name is flutter app.yaml, and it basically manages some internal dependencies and is completely managed by Flutter SDK, so you don't need to make any manual changes here. Now next is this pubspec.lock file, which is basically kind of a helper file created based on the pubspec.yaml file, and it lists the specific version of each dependency that packages use in your app and some other information about it. So we don't need to change anything here. Next is the pubspec.yaml file, and this is another important file, and it manages the dependency of your project. So this file contains some information about which third-party plugin our Flutter project might be using, and also some other assets like images, fonts and much more. And you can define your app version here. So we will writing our code in .yaml format here, and it is an indentation based format, so you have to be very careful while editing this file, and I will tell you some tricks to safely edit this file later on. Now next is this readme file, and you can write the description of your project here, and it will help you while sharing your project to someone else or in Git. And then this external libraries folder, it just contains the library that our project is using, so we can just ignore it. And the last is this scratches and console thing over here, and it is not a file or folder, it is basically a feature, or I must say a tool provided by Android Studio, with the help of which you can create scratch files, which can be of any type of file. It can be a Dart file or a Java file or any other file, and it is used to create like a kind of notes. So for example, while working with your project, you come up with an idea or some functions that you could later use, then you could just create a sketch file by right click on it and choosing new sketch file, and you can select the type of file you want. Then you can just write your code here and it will be saved as a draft code in your project, not a working code. So we will see later how to use it if we found it needy. So guys, that's all about the structure of a Flutter project, and the summary of this lesson is that we have to mainly work on this lib folder and the pubspec.yaml file, and rest we can simply ignore. So that's much for this video. If you like it, hit that like button, and if you're new to my channel, then subscribe my channel for more such video, and thanks for watching.